Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is the United Kitchens. And it's a rainy day in Florida, I can tell you that. The winds are whipping up, and it's very gloomy here. So we need to have some brightness, some cheerfulness, some nutrition, and some fun. So let us welcome to the show our celebrity chef and certified nutritionist, Ricki Mckenna. Hello.
Hello, hello. And it is sunshiny here in hot Houston. Welcome to Ricki's Kitchen and to USA Global TV United Kitchen.
Welcome, welcome. What will you be whipping up today?
Oh, this is really yummy. We're going to do some blackened shrimp, and we're going to combine it with some quinoa and maybe some avocado, and just produce something that's either really yummy, it's great for hot weather, even if it's raining, and a great kind of bowl where everything goes into one dish. You can see I've got it started here with the spinach. We're going to use some fresh spinach, and we're going to use some arugula, and we're going to use some shrimp that are frozen. And I will show you in a minute as soon as I there we go, readjust the camera so you can see what I'm doing. There you go.
And I'm going to spotlight you anyway. And before I go backstage, I just want to mention to our audience, we love to hear from you. So any comments you have or any questions you might have, we would be eternally grateful to know that you're engaged with us. So, Chef, I will leave you to it.
Okay, and don't anybody go away. I have to do something, it's called fishing. And the reason I'm doing it this way, it's actually the blackened shrimp, and you can either use brown rice or quinoa. And today we're going to use quinoa because it cooks much faster than brown rice. And it has quite a bit more nutritional content than just brown rice. And I'm using frozen shrimp for a reason, to show you that when you get home and you're in a hurry to fix something for dinner and you go, oh shoot, that's in the freezer. Here's what you do. You get a bowl that's big enough to accommodate the shrimp, and you take a handful of frozen shrimp, and these are the large Argentinian shrimp, and I'm going to take out about 10 of them. It's about half a pound, and I'll show you what we do. First of all, we put the rest of them back in, unless you're making this for more than one person, and actually a half a pound of shrimp will work for two. So we will take the rest of it, refreeze it, and I'm going to take my bowl of frozen shrimp and put it in the sink with some tepid water. Not hot, not cold, kind of in the middle. And these are absolutely wonderful because they thaw out very quickly. And the other thing I'm going to do is take my carrots, and instead of, because we're going to use carrots in the recipe, it's very interesting because the dressing that we're going to use is a carrot ginger combination. And yesterday, without the carrots, and somebody mentioned, can you do it with something else? So we did apple ginger. And I've got the results of that somewhere, because it made quite a bit of really yummy dressing. And we decided that we might almost like it better if it's apple ginger rather than carrot ginger. And this is how I store my things in the refrigerator, in glass jars. So we have both apple ginger, and we will have some carrot ginger dressing as well. So let me just give these little guys a scrub, which I do. I always recommend scrubbing, not peeling. And if you have a nice clean sponge to use, use the scrubby side of the sponge so that you get the dirt off, but you don't take off the nutrients. And actually, carrots, interestingly enough, are one of those vegetables that you could actually peel with a carrot peeler or a vegetable peeler, and you don't lose the nutritional content. But I happen to like them because it's just the whole carrot that we're going to use rather than taking the peel off. And whoops, with my trusty little knife, I will just trim those carrots. And we will take them and chop them up in just a few minutes. But first I want to get my quinoa started. So we take, I'm only going to do a small amount because I want about a cup of quinoa. So I'm going to use about a quarter cup of tricolor quinoa. And we're going to measure that. Because quinoa, actually, there's about a half a teaspoon left here. So I'm going to put the whole thing in. So it's a little bit over a quarter cup of quinoa. And then I'm going to take it and use my trusty little strainer. Now this is one of those things where the first time I did this years ago with quinoa, I had to laugh because I didn't realize, this was before I started doing really chef work and actually working with a lot of different tools. So one of my favorite tools is a very tightly woven, so we won't lose the quinoa strainer. So we'll take that and we'll just run it under water until the quinoa stops. You'll see it has bubbles because that's the starch of the little, it has kind of a coating on it. It's similar to starch. And so we want to get that coating off to prevent it from being bitter. Alrighty. So we'll give that a nice rinse in cool water. And I'm going to show you how to cook the quinoa so that you get a little more flavor out of it. Because quinoa basically is rather bland and it takes on almost anything that you use as a dressing or as a seasoning. So we're going to take the quinoa and, all right, there it is. This is a very interesting house. We have construction going on next door to the studio, so things move. So I'm going to take my quinoa, and if you dump it in wet, you get the whole thing. And the reason I'm doing it wet is because I want to turn it on. I'm going to put it on high, and I'm going to let the quinoa kind of roast in the pan. So it gets to the point where it's dry. Remember, we just rinsed it, so it's wet. And it's dry, so we're going to rinse it until we're going to let it cook in the pot. You got to keep an eye on it until it gets dried so that it gets almost flaky again. In the meantime, we're going to start doing our blackening seasoning for the, I said we had construction next door, and I didn't think everything was moving, but we may have more than construction going on. All righty, we'll keep things on the counter, and I will make sure that things are where they're supposed to be. So to do the blackening for this wonderful dish, we will take, first of all, you can use fish, by the way, instead of shrimp, but we're going to do shrimp today. And we're going to take a tablespoon of chili powder. So I unscrew the top and do a whole tablespoon of chili powder. And remember, I've got at least half a pound of shrimp, and they're large shrimp. So if you're serving more than 2 people, you can always cut them in half and spread them out a little bit. And I'm also going to use cayenne pepper, but just about a half a teaspoon of that or less to taste. So I'm going to just sprinkle, because that you'll be able to taste it. So that's approximately, I think I used about a quarter teaspoon of the chili powder. Then we have paprika. And the paprika department will use just a half a teaspoon. And it calls for smoked but I personally prefer the regular paprika. So we will just use about half a teaspoon of that. And next we will do some black pepper. And you can actually, it's beginning to sizzle. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's starting to dry out, which is what I want it to do. But it's not yet completely dry, and I want to wait until it gets completely dry, and then we will put in the water to help to cook it. And the reason that I'm using the quinoa again rather than the rice is it takes about 12 to 15 minutes to cook rather than almost 40 for real true brown rice. And we will use some kosher salt. Not a lot, maybe a teaspoon, just a wee bit, a pinch, a big pinch. And I'm going to make sure we're getting dry. Okay. And here's what I want to show you. You can see how it's kind of fluffy. It'll move around. And when it was wet, it wouldn't do that. So we've got it to the point where it's beginning to roast, and you can smell the kind of nutty aroma that comes from it. So now I'm going to take, since I used a little over a quarter cup of the quinoa, I'm going to take grab my filtered water, about half a cup of filtered water. Maybe just a hair more. You can hear it sizzle. There we go. Check on my shrimp. They're beginning to thaw. This is good. So what we do now with the shrimp, once they start to thaw, is delete the water and add some more water. Again, clear water. And the shrimp are getting nicely thawed. So in the meantime, we've got our quinoa starting. We'll give it a little swirl and bring it up to a boil and then cut it back down to low so that it will simmer. Okay, so we have salt, paprika, chili powder, and cayenne pepper. And we're also going to add a little bit of zest from a lime. And make sure your limes, if you keep them in the refrigerator, any kind of lemon, lime, or orange, before you start to zest them, make sure that they're dry. And I do have one that I just bought, but I want to use the one that I had in the refrigerator because I want the coolness in there. So we're going to zest this. And let's see how we do that. And it calls for the zest of 1 lime. And of course, limes are little, so we can get that done in a hurry. And you can zest it up this way so you can see how much there is. And what I recommend is if you have lemons and limes or oranges and you're going to be using the zest, that you take the zest, take a couple of oranges and a couple of lemons and a couple of limes, and you zest them and put that in the freezer. Separate them into separate airtight containers and put them in your freezer for future use so that when you're in a hurry, if you're doing things at home and you're in a hurry to get things done, you've already got this step taken care of. And it's really easy because they do stay beautiful in the freezer. And I can hear my quinoa starting to bubble. So we'll go over there and turn that down. Perfect. And cover it, give it a little mix. And I'm just going to put a teeny bit of salt in it, not much. And let that simmer for about 12 to 14 minutes. Okay. So now we're back here. We've got our lime zested. And you can use some onion powder. I prefer not to, so we're not going to use that. And to mix all these dry ingredients, this is one of my favorite tools. It's called a whisk. And I think that a whisk really does work beautifully on dry ingredients. I use it for baking as well, for flours and so forth. So it really gets the ingredients mixed together well. And we want these mixed well because we are going to dredge our shrimp in it. Now, another ingredient is cumin. And we're going to take a tablespoon of cumin. Yummy. And so now we have cumin and chili powders, and now we're going to add a little oregano. Or if you prefer, you can use something like thyme, but today I'm going to use oregano. And it calls for officially 1/8 of a teaspoon, and I think we've overdone the oregano, so it'll have a little more of an Italian flavor. And so we'll mix all that up. And then we're going to take our shrimp, which should be just about defrosted at this point. And we've got approximately, if you want to look at something like cups or ounces, we've probably got 1/4 cup or maybe a little bit more in the way of the mixture to dredge it through. Let me just make sure I've got everything in there. One other thing that we are going to put in, and that is garlic. And we're going to use fresh garlic. So I'm going to chop that up and mince it by hand. And sometimes I use the already peeled garlic because I find it's far more convenient than having to chop into a whole pod and clean it all the time. So I'm going to be carefully removing the little teeny tiny root ends, and then we'll chop it up. And we'll mince it so that we'll get the garlicky flavor and teeny pieces of garlic in there, which is one of my favorite and one of the healthiest things you can put into your body. Garlic is excellent for even cancer preventive in many cases, especially for women. And the only thing is to be careful if you're using raw garlic, or even if you're cooking with garlic. Sometimes it can be a pervasive odor. I once had a massage therapist that used to eat raw garlic, and before he came in and worked on me, we could tell when he had some garlic. So be careful with that. But the fresh garlic is my favorite, and so that's what we're using today, and it's nicely minced. I used about 2 cloves, one pretty big one, and we will put that in there and mix it up. All right, carefully on my wooden top. There we go. And now we will mix all that in. You can see what we've got here, this lovely mixture that we're going to dredge the shrimp through. And let's see, I believe that does it. Now, if you can use your choice of either avocado oil or olive oil. Again, I'm giving you choices, different flavors. And since we're using I got quite a bit of oregano in there, so I'm going to use olive oil this time. When I've made the recipe before, I've used avocado oil, which is perfectly wonderful for using because it has a high flash point, so it's great for sauteing. And so we're going to take about a tablespoon of the olive oil. And I'm going to use a non-stick pan so you can see what happens with this because it gets to be very pretty in the pan. And get the rest of my ingredients ready here. Perfect. So it took about 15 minutes or less, actually, for the shrimp to defrost. And so now I'm going to get one of my other favorite tools. It's a little skinny tongs, and we're going to dredge the shrimp in this. Now remember, they're wet, so they'll pick up the blackening seasoning perfectly well. So you can see where I'm going here. And it will get really full of this wonderful stuff. And in the meantime, My my olive oil is starting to heat up, so that'll be ready for us to just put the shrimp right in. I'm going to make sure I shake off the excess here. And we have enough for about 10 shrimps that I've got. We'll start with this. No, it's got to heat up a little bit more. I want some sizzle when I hit the pan. So we'll continue to dredge the shrimp. And then we'll go over to the stove and we'll show you how this works. Here we go. It's starting to sizzle. You want sizzle before you put your shrimp in. And I'm doing them one at a time just because that's the way it's working this morning. You can put them all in at once if you like. And these were obviously cleaned and deveined shrimp that I'm using so that they're easy and convenient, which I love. Okay, here we go. And let's switch over there so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I want you to notice something. You can see the olive oil. And what I'm going to do is pick the pan up because you can see where either the burner is not quite level or the pan is not quite level. So you'll find that things gather. You'll see what's happening with the olive oil coming back this way. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. There we go. Beautiful. And I've got enough shrimp here that I can cut up either for 2 servings or for 1 really healthy serving. I want you to see what happens with all that beautiful blackening that's on there. And my quinoa is going well. Okay, we'll let that sizzle. I'm going to turn it down a little bit because my range happens to cook fairly high. And now we will take another bowl. And we're going to mix up our dressing. And get back over here. We're going to keep an eye on the shrimp because, as you probably know, shrimp cook rather quickly. And so we'll have to keep a good eye on those. That's why I turned them down. And our quinoa is doing beautifully. So now for the dressing. And we will be using, today I'm going to use the carrots. And I'm going to use my blender. And since it's not a huge amount of dressing, I'm going to use my single blender, which I usually use for smoothies. So we'll put this over here and get everything ready. The first thing we do is the olive oil. And we need about 1/3 of a cup, and something tells me that I don't have quite enough in here. But let's see. Nope. So we're going to have to go after the olive oil. Now I could mix the oils. Just almost enough. Nope. We're going to have to grab out the olive oil. And that's a good thing for a lesson here because olive oil, I keep my olive oil in the pantry, and I prefer olive oil that comes in glass. So glass bottles, I think, are much healthier and much better for the atmosphere and the environment. So I've got 1/3 of a cup of my olive oil. I'm going to shuffle these guys around. Actually, I'm going to flip the shrimp right now, and they're blackening beautifully. And since this pan and my range retain enough heat. And you actually turn them off and let them finish because they will finish. That's the nice thing about shrimp. So we've got 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. Okay, and we've got some rice vinegar. Now vinegar, just quick lesson in vinegars, they come in all different forms. They come in natural rice vinegar, there is white wine vinegar, there's red wine vinegar, there's balsamic. Balsamic is the one that actually is the sweetened one. So if you're doing the dressing or you're using something and cooking something like lamb chop, it's great for them. And we want another 1/3 of a cup of rice vinegar, which may seem like a lot, but it all blends out beautifully. So there's our vinegar and our oil. And next, we're going to take our 2 large carrots. And it suggests peeling, but again, I said, no, we're going to do them my way. I'm going to chop them up so that we can put them in the blender. Chop them roughly, because they will blend, and you're going to result's going to be having a kind of a thick, chunky dressing, but it's beautiful on these things. So I'm going to take my carrots, put them in the blender cup, which is my smoothie cup, and we're going to chop this little guy up too. It's going to be noisy for a minute, but that's okay. And the reason I'm using this is because this is a finer blending than some of the other blenders when you use the bigger containers. Okay, now ginger. We're using the carrots, the rice vinegar, the olive oil, and the ginger, and some sesame oil. This is toasted sesame oil, and here again with sesame oil, which will help cut the vinegar as well. It only calls for a teaspoon and a half. So sesame oil is very potent, so we're going to be real careful with our teaspoon here. And my quinoa is done. The lovely sound of the timer has told me that. And I'm going to do another ½ teaspoon in here of the sesame oil. You will be able to taste the more sesame oil you use if you've ever made a dressing with it or anything else. You will taste it. It's very potent. So far we have that in there. We've got the oil. We get 2 oils in the vinegar. And now we will take 2 tablespoons of lime juice. But first I want to chop up some ginger. And we talked, I think another time we spoke about how do you peel ginger. And you use the back of your knife. If you have a really sharp paring knife, you use the back of it. But first we turn off the quinoa and let that finish beautifully. Okay, and we have our shrimp waiting over there, so we got to get our dressing ready. And I'm going to take the back of my knife and peel the ginger, and I need about 2 tablespoons. So if everybody can see what I'm doing, you can peel this way, however you like it. I find that it's safer for my eyes if I peel this way. Peeling it the other way seems to invite it to come hopping up. And if you've ever gotten ginger splashed in your eye, it hurts. Okay, so we're peeling our nice fresh ginger. And I like to use ginger in a lot of different recipes simply because I love the taste of it. But there's a really other good reason for using ginger, and that is it is anti-inflammatory. And it's very good for sparking your metabolism and for helping with inflammation in any part of your body. So here we have, I've got a piece that's about almost the size of my lime that I'm going to be putting in. And I'm going to cut it up so the blender will do a nice job on it as well, into little pieces. And just for fun, we'll put it in the tablespoon and measure and see how close I am. Okay, I've got 1 tablespoon there. And you have to figure for the spaces in between. And another tablespoon here. So that worked out beautifully. And with something like this, you don't have to be exact with the measurements, as I mentioned before. If you're baking something, yes, I would recommend following, exactly the measurements. But if you like a little more ginger, put in some ginger. And so I'm putting in a little bit more ginger and a wee bit of salt. And let's see what else. What have we left? Lime juice. Yes, I have a good sized lime here. It's about 1.5 inches long and about almost 1.5 inches wide. It's a real lime. And when you're picking limes, by the way, pick the ones that have the smoothest skins. Limes, oranges, lemons, the smoother the skin, the riper the fruit is. And what I'm going to do is actually use the one that I've already zested, because that'll be even easier to squeeze. Cut it in half and get my wonderful little lemon squeezer. And I love this one because it has a cup underneath it that catches the juice so we can actually measure it, which makes life a lot easier when you're doing things like this, especially if you're going to measure. And we've got just under a tablespoon there. So we're going to grab the other half, and we might have to use some of the other one. It depends. Yesterday's lime was it was actually over 2 tablespoons. And so you get a good exercise in crunching citrus this way. All right. And actually, I wouldn't even bother measuring, but there it goes. And we'll just give this another squeeze because there's a bunch of pulp left in there. And maybe we can just get a little bit more. There we go. Out of that. Okay. Now we're going to have some noise because I'm taking all of this and going to put it in my blender. See, so let's just do a check. We've got olive oil, we've got vinegar, we've got carrots, we have ginger, and those are the 2 super ingredients, and toasted sesame oil and some salt and lime juice. Now, one other ingredient may be necessary, and I'll tell you why. But first, we're going to give this a whirl. I'm stopping and starting or kind of pulsing it is because sometimes some of the ingredients go all the way up to the top. You want them to drop down in your blender. Okie dokie. And here we have our carrot ginger dressing. Beautiful. It is thick, and I'll show you. Where's my... Okay. It's kind of coated on the... I think you can see it. I'll bring it over to the other camera where we can dress the shrimp. I'm going to pour it back in here, and I'm going to give it a taste. And the reason I'm going to do that is... there's one other ingredient that we may want to add, and that is honey. Because if you notice, we use the vinegars and we use lime, all of which are quite tart. So what I'm going to do now, just according to my taste, and this is according to your taste as well, I'm going to take my raw honey and use about half a teaspoon. because you don't want it too sweet, but you want it to affect. Honey's incredibly efficient at changing the taste and the flavors of whatever you put it into. So I'm going to make sure I get all of that in there. And yes, you can use your fingers if it's yours. And just whip it up for sure. Isn't that pretty? Lovely color. And I'm going to get the blender out of my way before I stab myself with it. Nothing goes to waste in this kitchen. Okay, so we have our beautiful carrot ginger dressing here. And I'm going to take my spinach in the bowl and get a few things out of the way first. All right. It would be lovely having an assistant. However, it's me. Okay, here we go. And let's, whoops. As I said, we can use, I've only got a little bit of spinach in there. You can take a large handful of spinach, but the reason I only used a little bit in half the bowl is because I have some wonderful fresh arugula that I'm going to put on the other side and kind of mix it. So we have a base of fresh arugula and spinach, raw spinach and raw arugula in our bowl, that you can see. And I'm going to take a little spoon and just drizzle, just kind of spot it around the dressing on the greens. You can use greens, whatever your choice of greens is. And then I'm going to take my quinoa, which is wonderful, and add about a half a cup per serving. And of course, quinoa, as far as I'm concerned, it has a better, I think I mentioned this, a better nutrient count than just rice, even brown rice, because quinoa is also about 40% protein. So you're getting protein in the quinoa, you're getting protein in your shrimp, and a little teeny bit of it in the greens. And now, for the finishing touch, we have our beautifully blackened, as you can see, shrimp, which I'm going to set in there. And you've also got a pan full of yummy dressing, if you choose to put that on there. And let's see. Dr. Jacalyn, are you hungry yet? I think she's there someplace. All right.
I am here, Ricki. I didn't want to tell you that I have an extremely bad allergy to shrimp. I can't even be in the same room as shrimp.
Oh, yes. This is one good time when we can't put it through the screen to you.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Well, then I tell you what I'll do. Once I get this dressed, I'm going to show you how to do it, but with fish. You use a fish fillet. And rather than dredging it in the dressing, the blackening part, you would take the fish fillet. You would do the same thing with the olive oil in the pan. Take your fish fillet, make sure that it's just slightly damp so that you can either sprinkle or pat it down with the blackening. And then put it in, blacken side first. Sprinkle some more blackening on it. And if you're using something like orange roughy, or something like cod is thicker, but orange roughy is a little bit thinner so that it would cook very quickly. You just let it cook on one side for about 3 to 4 minutes. Flip it over, but first sprinkle it again and pat it down. You can use your hands to pat it down, or a spatula, whatever. And do the same thing with a fillet. And then you just lay the fillets across the plate, the same as we've done with the shrimp, and then use your dressing, which I'm going to sprinkle all over here. And we should have somebody coming down the stairs very shortly into the studio, into the kitchen. I want to add one more goodie. And I'll be right back. And that's because it looks really pretty this way, as you can see. We're just about ready. We've got our quinoa, our greens, and the shrimp, or fish in your case. And I'm going to take an avocado and put about a quarter of an avocado in here, just a couple of slices. It not only gives you color and makes it look pretty, and if your avocado peels like this, it's the right ripeness. And just cut a couple of really nice slices, like 3 or 4. And not only does it decorate the plate, but it also adds really good fats and some other nutrients, minerals and nutrients that you want in your diet. And so here we have it. That's our blackened shrimp or fish, if you're allergic to shrimp or don't care for it. And we're using the tricolor quinoa and some avocado for decoration, but also for yummies. And there we go. And now you've got a whole bunch of wonderful dressing that can be used on salads or any other dish that you decide to use. The orange and, carrot and ginger dressing works well on any salad. You can add fruit. You can add oranges, would be wonderful if you chopped up some oranges into a salad. And just a whole bunch of different things that you can do with that. So I would take it now and I'm going to put it in a glass jar, same as I did with the apple ginger dressing, and serve lunch. So thank you very much.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Delicious.
It is. I have tasted it.
I've never actually tasted shrimp.
Well, if you're allergic to them, I would suggest that you don't want to.
No, I'm allergic to all shellfish. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, but it looks like a beautiful dish.
It does work well. Yeah. It's actually great for a luncheon because it's fairly quick, especially if you do the quinoa beforehand. You can keep it in your refrigerator or you can leave it out at room temperature. That's the nice thing about quinoa. Or a grain like that, either rice or quinoa, can be kept on your range in a pot or in a closed container. And it can stay there for a couple of days even. So you've got your choice of room temperature or hot. This can actually be, once the shrimp are getting to the point, or the fish, I would prefer to have it a little cool, but you can eat it at room temperature. Not a little warm, but it can be served at room temperature as well. And I just might take another piece of this little lime here and just sprinkle it all over everything, which is what I'm going to do.
And Chef, you're going to put up your banner, and for people who are interested in contacting you, or they're interested in buying your book, or please let people know how to get in touch with you.
Thank you. I get so caught up in the cooking, I forget about that. You can get in touch with me either at rickiskitchen.net. That's RICKIS, no apostrophe, .net. And you can also go to email me either at Ricki at Ricki Mckenna or Ricki at Ricki's Kitchen. Again, no apostrophes in there, RICKIS kitchen.net. And you can also call or text me at 970-618-7607. And the book, thank you for reminding me, Dr. JACALYN is also an author on Amazon. And here it is. It's Yes, You Can Eat Well and Eat Right and Find the Joys of Cooking. So this is on Amazon. Again, it's Yes, You Can Eat Well and Eat Right. And that means for your body type and for your choices, for your whatever your pleasure is as far as food goes. And if you want some hints on the nutritional counts of things, it's in here. There's actually a chart on cooking legumes and beans. and a number of other things, and about 30 or 35 recipes. So have fun, order your book, and enjoy. Hearty appetite.
Thank you so much, Chef. Enjoy your lunch and have a beautiful weekend.
Yes, you as well. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye for now.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening, whether it's on the live or the replay. We're just so happy that you're here. If you'd like to be a guest on our shows, please go over to our website, which is usaglobaltv.com. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, we would love for you to subscribe. Just click that little subscribe button and you'll be informed of all of the shows that we have. We currently have 29 shows a week. 23 of those shows are shows like this, where it's either interaction between 2 or 3 people, and the other 6 are our talking head shows, which are presentations by our team of experts called Talking Heads. And that's all we have for right now. We're coming right back in less than 15 minutes with our next show, which is The Listening Mentor. And that will be followed by Loving Longevity and closing out the day and the week with Pet Psychic Amina. So thank you again for being here. We will say sayonara for right now. Bye.